Nice to see you all. Having a good day so far? Yes. Excellent. Hoping it's going to get even better now. Yes. Excellent. So the original title of this, I think, was How to Survive Your CIPD Course. So this is about how to navigate your CIPD course, and also then how to use the course and the qualification to support you in your career. So those are the two things that I'm going to share with you this afternoon, and we're going to get through a lot of stuff. So I am videoing this, and then it will be available for you to watch anytime you want. You need a bit more excitement or a bit of a pep talk as you're getting through your course and so on. I wonder, why am I telling you this? As in, why me? Why am I telling you this? I'm a member of the Coventry and Warwickshire branch committee, and I'm currently the student rep on the branch committee as well, so still looking for a replacement. So there's anybody here in the Coventry and Warwickshire area interested in joining the committee, be the student rep. It's full of excitement, travel, there's sandwiches almost every month for free. And it's really great, actually. It's a really great way to get a lot more value out of your CIPD membership. So if anybody's interested in that, then come talk to me. I did a level 7 advanced diploma, the HRD version. I did that 2 years ago. So I joined the CIPD as a student member, as I guess all of you or most of you are. And I did the level 7 advanced diploma with no previous academic experience at all. And I just thought, why bother going through all the other levels if I can just go straight for the top? Why not? So I did that. And last year I was a finalist in the People Management Awards for Outstanding Student of the Year. And that was, my submission was my research report from the level 7 advanced diploma, the Investigating a Business Issue module, which I know causes a lot of headaches for a lot of people. So we'll get on to that. So some of what I'm going to share with you today is official CIPD advice, and I'm not sharing it with you because it's the official advice. I'm sharing it with you because it's good advice, and it just happens that the CIPD would agree with it. Some of this is unofficial advice. Don't tell the CIPD that I told you some of this stuff. What I can guarantee is all of this will help you. So first of all, your course. So hands up if you're doing level 3. Level 5, level 7, very nice. And hands up if you're doing it in a study centre, so you're going somewhere every week and, same. And hands up if you're doing it online, distance learning. Hands up if you're doing a combination. Great, nice mix. So I did mine online. And so the things I'm going to share with you about the course and surviving the course will be about making time to study, about assignments, getting feedback from tutors, and the exams. Has anybody got exams booked coming up in May? Very nice. September, anybody? Very good. Hands up if you're doing level 7. So you've got exams at some point whenever you get around to that. Fantastic. Finding time to study first. The thing I think most people say is, I'll do the studying in my spare time. Anybody said, who started the course thinking, I'll do it in my spare time? Put your hands up if you thought that. And who then quickly realised you have no spare time? Yes. So how much spare time do you actually have in your life right now? If you just think, in general, how much spare time do you actually have in your life at the moment? No. Absolutely zero. The reason being, it isn't because you can't make the time, it's because you fill every minute of every day with something. There is never a minute of any day where you're just standing there doing something. And what I started off thinking was, right, I'll do it in the evening because my wife's watching TV and I'm not interested in watching TV, so I'll do it in the evening. And then I found out that actually taking that time in the evening just to sit and stare at the screen and people making fools of themselves on whatever program it is, you need that time to unwind, as was it Julie from ACAS was saying about sort of making time just to do nothing is actually very important. So you need that. So the only way you're actually going to create any time to do the studying is by making it. You've got to make the time. And I know this is a cliche, I know it sounds obvious, you've got to prioritise, but the point is this: every day where you're not doing the work that's getting you through the assignments and getting you through the exams and getting you that certificate is another day that's gone by that qualification has not been supporting your career progression. So if it takes you a year longer to do the course, that's a year that your career has not benefited from having the qualification. So just get it done as quickly as you can, make it the priority. Also, think about why you're taking the course. Think about why you enrolled in it in the first place. For me, it was about my career. I'm self-employed. I'm a white, middle-aged male, self-employed L&D consultant. I am the minority in the CIPD membership. But I didn't have anything to prove. I'm not saying that. But for me, it was definitely about supporting my career, supporting my business, and I guess for all of you, somehow, you're doing the course because it's got something to do with your career aspirations, something to do with your job. And so, if you are doing the course for reasons of work, then when should you be studying? At work. You should be studying during the working day, because it's your job. And I know what you're going to think. You're going to think, oh, I'm too busy. Oh, my boss expects me to. Oh, but my manager said they'd pay for the course if I studied in my own time. You what? Why did you agree to that? They said they want you to do something that benefits their business and expect you to do it in your own time? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't add up. Think about the amount of time you spend at work making it look like you're working when you're really not, and use that time for studying. And you know what I'm talking about. I used to, when I worked in the telecoms industry, I used to spend entire days walking around large offices with nothing more than a blank piece of paper in my hand. Because if you've got a blank piece of paper in hand, nobody will ever ask you where you're going. And especially if you walk with purpose. And no, he's busy, don't stop him. So use all that time for studying. Why not? It's benefiting the company that you work for, or it's benefiting you if you're self-employed. So that's where it's got to be. I guess the important question is, do you still want to be here? I mean, not physically in this room. They will throw you out at some point. But do you still want to be here doing what you're doing now in another 10 years' time? If the answer is no, if you have career aspirations, if you want to be doing something else, if you're doing this to benefit your job, then this is your job, and this is what you have to prioritize. Because, as I said, every year that goes by, or every month that goes by, where you don't have that certificate in your hand, that's a month that you're missing out on opportunities to progress your career. And that's important to you. One of the most useful and simple things that I found was making a study schedule. So what I found was, when I started the course, I enrolled for an online course, and I was getting through it very slowly. I was finding it difficult to find the motivation, difficult to make the time, and I didn't really have a sense of how long, at what sort of rate I was getting through the course. And this is very important to measure your own progress. So what I did was I made this study schedule. And what it shows you is the top three rows are, at the rate that I'm going, how long will it take me to finish the complete course? And when I looked at the time I'd been studying, the number of assignments I'd completed, and I multiplied that out over the whole course, what I found was it was going to take me 3 years to finish the course at the rate that I was going. And that was a real shock. I thought, I don't want to spend 3 years doing this. That's ridiculous. I want to get it done as quickly as I can. So what the three rows at the top allowed me to do was to see, at the rate that I'm going, when am I going to finish this? And then the bottom row allowed me to tick off, and I actually used to write in the grade that I got for each of the assignments, for each of the modules. Now, I would recommend that you make a tracker like this that allows you to predict how long the course is going to take you. Slightly different if you're in a study centre and you're working at the same pace as everybody else, but if to any extent you can manage the pace of your own learning, then do this. Most importantly, track assignments, not modules. The reason being, different modules have different numbers of assignments and take different amounts of time to finish. So track the number of assignments, and that'll give you a pretty accurate measure of how quickly you're going to go through the course. And you're either going to work that out and say, yeah, I'm happy with that, or you're going to think like I did, I don't want to spend that long doing it, I need to pull my finger out. And when I realised that, that's when I changed my thinking and realised I've got to do this in the daytime. And as soon as I made it my priority in the working day, I started off 6 months behind schedule. So I'd spent 6 months and done almost the entire course in 19 months. So that means if I'd have had that attitude from the beginning, I would have done the whole thing in a year. And it wasn't a huge demand on my time, for some of the reasons that I'm going to share with you today. But like I said, don't tell anybody from the CIPD. So textbooks. Have any of you struggled with textbooks, like the cost of textbooks or how difficult they are to read? I mean, they're not exactly Harry Potter, are they? You're not going to take one on holiday, probably. And they're not meant to be. These sorts of textbooks, they are not meant to be read from cover to cover. They are not written as novels, particularly these sorts of textbooks, which aren't based on primary research. They're reference guides. They're to help you with referencing. You're not meant to read them and find everything there is to know about HR. And they cover such a wide range of subjects that what I found was, if I was looking for a reference for a particular assignment, there might be one paragraph in a textbook on that subject, or none at all. And what I very quickly realised, I was lucky that I did mine online, as I say, and what they do is they give you access to e-books for versions for the duration of the course. I know some people have to buy the hard copy textbooks, and that's no fun. They're expensive. You'll find that in the Facebook groups particularly, there are people always selling their old textbooks, so that's worth a look. A couple of other points as well is, you don't need the textbooks for referencing. Everything that's in the textbooks is online. Google Scholar is a great resource, but the best resource, and worth the whole price of the CIPD membership alone, by far the best CIPD member benefit, is access to the EBSCO portal. Who's never heard of that? So on the CIPD website, the EBSCO portal, what it is access to academic research, to business journals that normally you would have to pay for, and you would have to pay more than your cost of your CIPD membership. And it's a fantastic resource. And if you use that, you don't need the textbooks. So my secret top tip for how to use the textbooks to get through your courses, I didn't read a single one. I looked in one for one assignment, thought this is a waste of time, I never looked at them again. So assignments, I've got some tips to make the assignments go a bit more smoothly for you as well. First rule for assignments, anybody know what it is? Read the question. Very good. Seems obvious, but it's amazing how much you'll miss. Second rule for assignments is read the question. Technically the same as the first rule, but so important it was worth mentioning twice. The point being, everything that you need to know is in the question. The question isn't just asking you to write an assignment. The question is full of clues about how to answer the assignment. Don't read the question and think, right, get on, start writing. Stop, read the question, read the question. All the clues are in there. Second thing is, every 2 or 3 paragraphs that you write in your assignment, go and read the question again. Because what you'll find is, as you get into a flow of writing, your thoughts follow a sort of a chain of thought, of experience. You think of ideas, you think of examples, and before you know it, you're no longer answering the question that's asked, you're answering the question that you would like to answer. And you might write an absolutely beautiful, prize-winning, wonderful essay, but it isn't an answer to the question, and you won't get any points for it, and it just takes up valuable time. So I found, especially this is true in the exams as well, very much, literally every 2 or 3 paragraphs, go back and check the question. Ask yourself ruthlessly, am I still answering the question? Assignments are easy if you read the question. If you are trying to make your assignments perfect before you start, you're missing the point of the feedback process and the way that the assignments work. So who's on the Facebook discussion groups for your particular course that you do? I highly recommend you join those. They're great communities. There's communities on the LinkedIn as well, but not so busy as Facebook, and on the CIPD website, of course. You don't learn anything by making your assignment perfect first time. All you do is take time. And I've been working on my first assignment for 6 weeks and I'm not ready to submit it yet because it's not perfect yet. So that's 6 weeks you've just wasted. It's just write anything, get it in, because you're not the person marking it. It's not up to you whether it's any good or not. What you think of your assignment is irrelevant. because you're not marking it. And not only are you comparing your assignment to the CIPD standard assessment criteria, whatever that is, you've also got the individual quirks and biases of the person who's marking it, the individual tutor. So you've got to get to know what the tutor's looking for as well. And the simplest and quickest and easiest way for you to get to know what the tutor is looking for is, oh, it doesn't matter what you think, I've already said that, is just, hang on, gone haywire, is just submit anything and see what feedback you get. So I'll talk a bit more about feedback in a moment. The other thing is, it doesn't matter what you think in terms of how well you've done. What matters is what the tutor thinks, because when you get the final certificate, and that's what it's going to look like, just to prove that, you know, I do have one. When you get the final certificate, it has no grade on it. See, when I started the course, I thought, right, I'm going to prove how amazing I am. I'm going to get distinctions in everything. And then very quickly I realized there is only the only difference between getting a pass and getting a distinction is the amount of time you spend. It's not a measure of how good you are or how clever you are. It's a measure of how much time you are willing to spend doing things like referencing and going back and thinking about structure and rewriting it and so on. And once your assignment has passed has got past the pass mark, you can't resubmit it. That's it. You've passed. Move on. So what I realised was, for me to get distinctions in everything was just going to take me a lot more time, and was just going to be a lot more hassle. And at the end of the day, there's going to be no benefit. Now, fair enough. With the certificate, you also get a sheet that has the grades of each module on it. Nobody ever looks at that. Nobody's asking. There's no job advert that says must have a level 5 HRM CIPD thing and must have got a distinction in these modules. That's get the qualification or you don't. So make life easy for yourself. So assignments are easy if you use the feedback. So you get a number of formative assignments, and then you get the summative assignment. And the summative is the only one where the grade counts. So if you use the formatives and literally submit anything, and don't expect to pass, because you don't need to with the formatives. You get 2 or 3 goes or 4 goes, whatever it is, 3 goes I think, before you have to do the final submission. So write anything and use it as a way of testing and provoking feedback from the tutor. Because what the tutor will do is they will look at their assessment criteria, they'll look at what you've written, they'll compare the two, and they'll tell you what the difference is. So the tutor will actually tell you exactly what you need to write in order to pass the module. They couldn't make it any easier for you if they actually wrote them. If they actually wrote the assignments for you, they couldn't make it any easier. So you simply submit whatever you think, whatever you've done, get some feedback, resubmit it based on the feedback, you're done. So with the online study centre that I did my course with, some of the tutors were very good. They'd get a day and I'd get back really good feedback. Other tutors, utterly useless. And the kind of service level, the standard time was 2 weeks, I think 10 working days, so 2 weeks to get the assignment back. And some tutors would use the full 2 weeks. And I realised that if I'm waiting 2 weeks for every bit of feedback, it's going to take me 2 months to get through the module. I can't wait that long. And there was one, I forget which module it was, but there was one module in the 2 weeks that it took to get feedback on a single assignment, I completed another entire module. So, don't wait for feedback as well. Do something else. Even, if you're working through a study centre and you can do something like exam preparation, that's time well spent. Fill the time that you've got. Don't wait. Third rule for assignments. Anybody know what the third rule for assignments is? Who's thinking, read the question? No, I caught you out. It's demand feedback. So most modules will follow the same format. Some are a little bit different. Skills for business, what is it? Skills for business leadership or something? I forget what it's called, SBL. And investigating a business issue a bit different. They seem to cause the most trouble. So the third rule about demanding feedback is if the feedback you get from a tutor is vague or is not clear or isn't helpful, Demand better quality feedback. You are paying a lot of money for these people to look at your work and give you feedback. If you're not happy with the feedback, if you can't make sense of the feedback, demand better quality feedback. As I said, with my study centre, I had some tutors who were very good, very specific, others that were useless, and I would have to make complaints to student services and email them and arrange calls with them, but you know, got there in the end. And you know, I couldn't recommend strongly enough that you expect to get your money's worth out of what you're paying for. So some tips for a couple of specific modules. Again, listening to people's questions as student rep, and also looking at the questions that come up on the discussion groups. The SBL. This is the one where you've got to put together like a personal portfolio of your learning, your personal development plan. Anybody done that one yet, or know that you've got that one coming up? Good. The question everybody asks about that is, what should I include in there? So you've got to put a portfolio of evidence. Stuff like CPD certificates, events you've been to, courses you've been on, all that sort of stuff. And people ask, what should I include? The answer is very simple. What's the answer? Absolutely everything. You're not going to lose marks for having too much in there. So you gain points for showing that you've got a personal development plan. But because that's what the tutor's looking for, just put everything in, everything that you can. So things like online reading that you've done, lists of websites that you've read, online courses that maybe you've taken, minutes of meetings at work, photocopies or scans of notes you've taken in meetings at work, showing the kind of range of experiences and subjects that you've been exposed to, showing the kind of things that you've done. Branch events. Who goes to local branch events regularly? Excellent. They're a terrific resource, and you get a CPD certificate for each one of those that you go to, so they're very valuable. Just put it all in there and let them figure out whether it's relevant or not. Investigating a business issue. Anybody working on a project, a research project? Fantastic. So most common question I hear for this one is, what topic should I choose for my research? And the answer is, it doesn't matter. Anything. Choose the effect of employee engagement on of the choices in the coffee machine. It doesn't matter. Nobody's interested in the slightest in the subject that you choose to do your research on. You're not being assessed on the choice of research. You're being assessed on your approach, your methodology. This module, which is probably the biggest one in terms of time that will take you. Choose any subject that you can vaguely connect to HR in any way that you can imagine. And keep the subject as narrow as you possibly can. So when you're collecting data, you collect as little data as you possibly can, which makes it as easy for you to process as it could be. So use the profession map as well. So the profession map is slowly working its way into the qualifications. I know there's some stuff going on with study centres this spring, so you might not see it right now in the exams coming up in May. I'm not sure of the timescales, but it's working its way in there. And so the simple routine, and the thing that you have to demonstrate to get through the IBI module, is you identify a problem. Any problem, could be anything at all, doesn't matter. As long as you can somehow connect it to people at work, that's all that it needs to be. Gather relevant data. As I said, gather as little data as you possibly can. Think about something really specific, or some specific questions that you can ask. And you can use SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. They're both free to do online surveys. Get all your friends to fill the surveys in. Get your colleagues at work to fill the surveys in. Get anybody to fill the surveys in. Just collect any data. The important point is your methodology of how you make sense of that data. So how you interpret it is important. And if you know about the new profession map, which you should do by now, you'll know that one of the most important core aspects of the new profession map is evidence-based. As people, professionals, we are making evidence-based decisions. And this module is a terrific way for you to develop and practice the skills to do that. So you're going to interpret your data. You're going to make whatever sense of it you make. and you're going to compare your interpretation to what published research says. And whether you agree with it or disagree with it doesn't matter. What matters is that's your conclusion that you've arrived at. That your conclusions are balanced. That's very, very important. One of the most common things in any kind of research is that the researcher starts with an idea or a hypothesis, and then they do research to prove that they were right, and then surprise, surprise, they find that they were right. If you do your research and you find actually the choices in the coffee machine had no impact on employee engagement, that's not a failure, that's a success. You proved something. That's great. If you found something that disagreed with some published research, that's great. You found something for yourself. That's valuable. So you make a very important thing as well, again in regards to the new profession map, is about being outcomes driven. So what was the result? What did we achieve? What's the impact that we had? And in this module, what you'll be looking for from that point of view is making informed recommendations. So here's a bunch of things that I would recommend that this organisation does as a result of my research. And they can be, they don't have to be sensible recommendations. They just have to be recommendations that you can say came from your research, that you say, well, I know realistically the organisation isn't going to do this. So when I did mine, for example, it was on the subject of why talent programmes fail. And one of the recommendations was don't do anything. Because realistically, politically, they're not going to deselect people from talent programmes because there's so much political stuff tied up in that. So do nothing then. That's a legitimate recommendation. Use the resources that are available to you. The CIPD spends a huge amount of time and our money doing research and creating resources that are there to help us. Most important thing to remember is the CIPD wants you. The CIPD is a membership organisation, so what the CIPD wants is for you to have a good experience of studying, for your qualification to help you in your career, and therefore for you to advance from being student members to associate, from associate to chartered and so on, and for you to stay members for the rest of your life, not because you're trapped, but because you're getting value from your membership and from the organisation. So the CIPD will do everything that it can to help you get through your course, short of doing it for you. So for example, we've got the Facebook groups that I mentioned, which are excellent resource. LinkedIn groups, not so busy, but still useful. And the CIPD Student Hub, very useful. Lots of advice on studying, lots of advice on career as well. The exams. So for those of you that have got exams coming up, either in the short term or for those of you thinking of going on and doing level 5 and 7 in the future, and you've got exams at some point, then bear all this advice in mind. The exams are easy if you prepare for them. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to prepare for them. So, as I said, the CIPD wants you to pass, so there's some really excellent resources. Before each run of exams, there are exam prep webinars. They are excellent. Sign up to the webinars, even if you can't make those dates and times because you're at work or whatever, because if you sign up to them, then you can watch your own time. And the webinars are run by examiners. And so, again, they will give you lots of really good advice that if you listen to it properly, they couldn't make it any easier if they, without cheating. So basically we'll tell you how to pass the exam, sign up even if you can't attend. Look at past papers. So past papers, also called examiners' reports, you'll find those. They become available, I think, pretty much as soon as the results are released, they become available. They're really interesting because they're not only the exam paper, they're also a report from the examiners on how people approached the questions, what kind of trends they saw, what things they saw that were good, what things they saw that were disappointing. Most importantly, in the examiner's report, it says, this is what people who failed did, this is what people who passed did, this is what people who got a merit did, and this is what people who got a distinction did. Honestly, couldn't make it any easier for you if they just gave you the answers. So they're very, very, not just for looking at what, because they recycle questions. as well. So if you look through the past papers, you'll see, maybe not about the exact same subject, but you'll see the same kind of questions come up again and again. Very, very important. Time yourself under exam conditions. One of the things that really worried me before taking the exam was prior to going for the exam, I think the longest thing that I ever wrote was a shopping list. Because bear in mind, during the exam, you've got to handwrite for 3 hours. Now you might think, well, I'll handwrite a lot of work, but you don't. You take notes in meetings or interviews or coaching sessions, and you might take notes for an hour, but you're not writing for an hour. In the exam, you are writing solidly for an hour, and I thought, I'm not sure I can do that anymore. And so that was something that I practiced, and I urge you to do the same. You do not know how fast you can handwrite. So in the space of 3 hours, you do not know how much you can answer. It doesn't matter how much is in your head, you don't know how much you can get onto paper, and ultimately it's only what's on paper that's going to result in you passing or failing. So what I did was I got a past paper, picked a question, and I timed myself and hand wrote the answer to that question to see how much can I actually write, what can I actually get in there. Time management, like with the study schedule that I showed you earlier, time management in the exam, absolutely the most critical thing. So calculate, when you've got 3 hours for the exam, for example, calculate how much time you've got for each question and be ruthless with yourself. So for me it was 18 minutes. And when you're coming up to 18 minutes, that's it. Finish, move on. If you're thinking, oh, I'll just add a bit more, and I'll just add a bit more, and I'll make it up on the next one, you will not make it up on the next one. Those 2 or 3 minutes that you've taken, they are gone forever, because they are gone off. You know, if you don't sacrifice those off this question, you're going to sacrifice them off another question. So be ruthless. Problem I had, so I did the HRM exam first. 2 days later I did the HRD exam, or the Leading and Developing People, or LMDP, whatever it's called. So the problem I had in the first exam, was I'd worked out my timing, 18 minutes per question. And I knew that if it was a 2-part question, that was 9 minutes per part. Problem was, first 2 questions for the case study were 3-part questions. And I didn't revise my timing down to 6. So by the time I'd finished those 2 questions, I was 12 minutes behind. Doesn't sound like much, but that's, if I'm allowing 18 minutes per question, that's 2/3 of time gone from a question. So I had to slim down all my remaining answers to make up for that, error. In the first exam, when I had that time management problem, I wrote 7 sides of A4. And in the second exam, because the last time I set an exam was, I think, 1991. So, you know, I'd done the exam prep webinars, but didn't really know what to expect. So, knowing what to expect, I went into the second exam, I wrote 11 sides of A4. That's the difference that time management makes. So, almost 50% more, that's 50% more that is on paper that the examiners can look at. They can't look at the stuff that's in your head. You'll receive your case studies ahead of the exam. You won't know what questions you're going to get on them, but you'll get the case studies and you can do the research. The way the case studies are written, the kind of companies they talk about, the kind of statistics or facts that they reference, they are full of clues. You don't know exactly what the question is going to be, but they give you a pretty clear direction over what's going to come up and what you're going to need to revise, to remember. So research facts and statistics, you know this already, statistics from the ONS or from the CIPD or from the CMI, those sorts of organisations that are doing research. Look up some recent case law, and you're probably thinking, oh, if I've got to remember figures and statistics and, you know, I don't know, employee migration figures for the last 5 years and case law, I'm not going to remember all of that in the exam. There are some things that you can do to make it easier for yourself to remember, particularly references, when you get into the exam. So references and statistics are very handy because they're a very, very easy way to gain points. If you look at the examiner's reports, one of the things you'll often see when they talk about what the distinction level students did was put a lot of references in. I think that in the first exam, the HRM exam, I think putting references in probably saved me and got me over the line to a pass. 2 days later, with better time management in LMDP, I got a distinction. And it's just time management and some simple tricks I'm going to show you to remember all these references and stuff. So the point is, remember as many references as you can, put them in as many as you can. If you put a reference in that's irrelevant, you don't lose a mark for it, just ignore it. So put as many references in that you think are in any way relevant to the point that you're making, to show that you're using that evidence base. It's not easy to remember names and dates when they don't mean anything. It's just a name, a year. You know it's got something to do with, I don't know, talent or recruitment or whatever, or diversity, but it doesn't mean anything. How do you remember all that stuff? So, I'll tell you what I did. First thing to remember is, you don't have to remember these references for the rest of your life. You've only got to remember them for 3 hours. So you don't have to commit them to short-term memory. I made a list, a long list of the subject, the name, the year of the reference. And I rewrote that list over and over and over again. So I categorized that list into areas like, I don't know, strategic HRM and learning and development and diversity and stuff like that. Rewrote the list, read it out to myself, read it out loud, recorded it on my phone. I printed blank sheets that had the categories on, and I rewrote it over and over and over again. And as soon as I wrote it and could write down all the ones I'd remembered, I'd go back to my reference list, fill in all the blanks that I'd forgotten, then I'd throw it away, start again with another blank sheet. And the reason for doing this is you're using multiple memories. So you know how you know a telephone number or a PIN, even though you don't know it, you kind of use an imaginary dial to you could dial it, but you couldn't remember it. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm not just making it up. That's good. So your motor cortex has a memory. Your verbal reasoning centers have memories. The way that your brain connects stuff up is lots of different memories working in different ways. So just remembering a reference and being able to see it, like BAS 1997, I don't know, something to do with management or other, is fine. But if you can't remember it, but your hand knows how to write it, then given the right trigger, your hand will write the reference, even though you can't remember it. Sounds crazy, but you do the same with phone numbers and with pins and stuff like that, because your motor cortex has memory of its own. And read it out to yourself. So I recorded it on my phone, and then I played it back to myself whenever I could. That was my master list of references, and I would say in the exam I remember most of those. No trouble at all by remembering. I've only got to remember this for 3 hours, don't have to remember this for the rest of my life. And then these were my 2 categorized sheets that I transferred the list onto. So what was happening is, in order for me to write the list out, I've got to remember what category to put the reference into, and that category corresponds to a place. So when I close my eyes and picture, I can picture what's in L&D, because now the place on the page is also part of encoding the memory. And I was literally standing outside the exam room in the hotel, still reviewing that list, right up until the moment the doors opened. When you start the exam, you get 10 minutes reading time. My advice is, don't use the reading time for reading. Use those 10 minutes to dump that picture of the list of references onto the scratch pad. And now you've got all your references written down for you to just liberally sprinkle over your questions, where they're relevant, of course. Use them as often as you can. The other useful thing about having your references written down is they will jog your memory. You'll look at a question, you think, oh my God, I don't know anything about this. And then you'll look at your references list and you'll think, oh, that guy, I remember what that guy said, I remember about reading that. And it will jog your memory about something that you can put in your answer to the question. So they kind of help you both ways. I don't know if they even look up references. I don't know if the examiners have even time. If you put in a reference that's really obscure, just because it happens to be memorable for you, I don't know if they check how relevant it is. And even if they do, they've got to work to disprove that it isn't relevant to you. So don't stress too much about having, you know, the most amazing, most relevant ones. The other advice I give you is find, as I was going through the assignments, through the whole modules, every time I came across a reference and thought, oh, that's a good one, that's quite a good multi-purpose reference, that covers a few things, I'd add it to my list. So I'd be building that list throughout doing the whole course. Then when I came to the exams, that was already done. So, new profession map I've mentioned already. The thing I draw your attention to is this bit in the middle, that the core principles, principles-led and evidence-based and outcomes-driven, very important. Remember that when you are writing your assignments and when you're writing your exam responses. That if you're thinking in that structure, if you're thinking, right, as a structure to an answer to the question, here's the principle behind it, here's the evidence for it, that's where you put your references, and here's the outcome, here's the impact, this is how we measure it, that sort of thing. So again, the CIPD have really worked hard on this to give you a structure that makes life easier for you. Right then, so how are we doing for time? Good. So your career now, so using all of this in your career. You've got your certificate, you finish your course, and you sit there waiting for the phone to ring, you sit there waiting for the emails to flood in from recruiters saying, oh, we've heard you've got this qualification now, you're amazing, please come and take up these 3 jobs that we're offering you. And that doesn't happen, I'm sorry to say. Your qualification will not open doors for you. But what the qualification does is it puts you onto a level playing field. There are lots and lots of other people out there with the same qualification, but at least now you're on that level. And you will find that there are jobs that say, you know, must have level 5, whatever, level 3, 7, whatever it might be. So at least now you're on that level, you're in the game now. Most important thing is the learning doesn't finish with the qualification. You get a certificate, now you've got to apply that learning, because applying the learning in your workplace, you're then gaining experience. You're then able to talk from experience. You're able to talk about impact. You're able to talk about outcomes, about measurement. That's very, very important. And most importantly, you are able then to demonstrate your value. You will not get a job because you've got the certificate. You will get a job because you are valuable. If you're thinking, and I see a lot of people, again, on the Facebook groups particularly asking this question, if you're thinking, well, I've got the certificate or I've got the qualification, but I don't have any, I only work in a small company, we don't do that here, we don't have a diversity program, we don't have working from home, I don't have the opportunity to put that into practice. Of course you have the opportunity to put it into practice. For example, if you don't have a diversity program, what do you need to do? Create one, yes. Everything that you do, everything that you initiate yourself is experience that you put on your CV, something that you did, something that allows you to make a difference, that allows you to measure impact, and something that allows you to write about your experiences, not only on your CV, but write about your experiences, start a blog, write articles on LinkedIn, because recruiters will look at this stuff. If you try and put something into practice at work and it doesn't work out so well and you figure out what the barriers were, write an article about it. Share that knowledge. Get something into the local CIPD branch newsletter. Offer to run, to do a talk about it at a CIPD local branch event. Share your knowledge. Get a reputation for creating and sharing knowledge. That increases your value. And talk about your impact, not your activity. Often you'll see in adverts, they'll say, oh, must have 5 years experience in what? You know, in some subject or other. You've spent 5 years doing what? Just because you've spent 5 years in a job doesn't mean you're any good at it. Doesn't mean you have experience in it. It's just recruiters being lazy. Don't allow them to be lazy. Don't allow them to get away with it. So reference the new profession map, because employers are going to be seeing this, HR people, HR directors, people you know, engaging with the CIPD in all these different ways, are going to be learning the language and talking in the language of the new profession map. So start doing that yourselves. Start talking in terms of your impact, not your activity. At the start of your career, qualifications are more experienced, because probably people have lower expectations about, about your experience that you've got. So qualifications are more important. But later on, experience becomes more important. And the paradox for everybody is, how do you get the experience if you don't have the experience in order to get the job to get the experience? So for recruiters, experience is a lazy way to predict performance. They'll think, if you've been doing it for 5 years, then you must be good at it. It's lazy. Time served is not the same as knowledge gained. So don't be led into the experience trap. Don't answer the question. Talk about your impact. Talk about measurable impact. Don't be led to have to explain why you've only got a year's experience or whatever it might be. It's irrelevant. So for example, if you said, well, I implemented a new HR information system, that's an activity, that's something that you did. It's nice, it doesn't tell us anything. Instead of saying that, say, I saved X amount of money. And pique people's interest. That sort of statement, that sort of fact, it gets people's interest, because then it forces them to ask the question, which is, how did you do that? And then you tell the story. And the story is all about you. So you say, oh, I had an HR admin job where I managed attendance records. It doesn't sound exciting. It probably sounds even less exciting than it really is. So instead, you would say, I increased retention and productivity by X amount. How did you do that? Because actually that's what you're doing. If you're doing something like managing attendance records, for what purpose? To know whether people are there or not. For what purpose? To make sure they're there more often. For what purpose? To increase retention. Oh, now you've got a measure. And this is something that you can talk about in terms of your impact. And this is all stuff that you're going to learn about in your studies for the CIPD course, that it is up to you and nobody else to put into practice and get practical experience from doing that. Don't let recruiters be lazy. Push them to think in terms of the new profession map, and certainly I'm going to speak to the CIPD about that myself, probably the membership, head of membership, to see how we can influence recruiters, because I think that's a gap in the language of recruitment and HR. Networking is incredibly important. Contribute to online forums. Don't just sit and read them and soak it up. Ask questions. Share your advice. Get your name known. Be seen as a contributor. Make suggestions. Pose challenges for people. Get involved. Go to branch events. Not just CIPD branch events, but you'll find pretty much any law firm that does employment law and all that sort of stuff will also run events for HR people. Go to as many of them as you can. There are loads of these sorts of organisations doing webinars. So, even if you can't get out to these events in the morning or whatever, then go to as many as you can. Get your face out there. Talk to people. And define your identity that focuses on your target role. One of the most awful things I see in every kind of networking event is somebody will come up to you and they'll say, oh, nice to meet you, so on. And they will ask the question, what's the question everybody asks at a networking event? What do you do? And the funny thing is, they don't want to know the answer to that question. They don't really care what you do. What they really want to know is, who are you? But that seems like an odd question to ask. It's easier to ask what you do. But when you're asked the question, what do? You don't tell them what you do, you tell them what you are. And you'll say something like, well, you see, now at the moment, you see, I work in HR, this thing, but what I'm really trying to do is I really want to move into this thing, but at the moment, and nobody's interested in your dramas of your career choices. Nobody cares. So simple rule of thumb for you, if you don't want to do it, don't talk about it. If you've got something in your job or your career that you'd rather not be doing, don't tell other people that it's what you do. Tell them what you'd rather be doing. So tell them why you are there. Tell them why you are at that event. I'm building my network to move into an OD role, and then ask them the real question that you want to ask is, who can you introduce me to? That's what you really want to know when you go to a networking event, because you go to a networking event to network, to build your network, to meet more people. So everybody you meet, ask them who they can introduce you to. I've got some business cards down here as well if anybody wants to come and pick one up later, and I'm happy to introduce you to anybody in my LinkedIn network for what it's worth. So think in terms of where are you going and who is going to help you get there. And the more people you're in contact with, the more people you're in front of, the more opportunities that you will create for yourself. Get involved in the CIPD. I find over the last few years that I've been a branch committee member has been absolutely the best way to get maximum money's worth out of my CIPD membership, and not just because of the free sandwiches, as welcome as they are, but being a member of the branch committee, it's been, been great having a network of people, getting involved in lots of different events, being able to do things like this, sharing knowledge, getting involved in what they're doing at the CIPD headquarters and so on. So it's been very valuable. So get involved in your branch committee. As I said, I'm still the student rep technically, although I'm not a student anymore, so if anybody's interested in taking that on, come and talk to me. Go to all these HR events you can. Get experience, get knowledge, stuff to put in your portfolio, stuff to put in your personal development plan, faces, be in front of people. Use the CIPD Career Hub, that's very valuable. Enter the Personnel Management Awards. So the only 2 awards in the PM Awards that are free to enter are the 2 student awards. The Outstanding Student and the Outstanding Student Advanced Level, which is one that I entered. Enter every year that you are a student. If you get selected as a finalist, it's a great experience going down, presenting to the judging panel, getting feedback. It's a terrific experience anyway, but do it, enter it, it's free, why not? It's something to talk about on LinkedIn. It's something that makes people want to know more about you. Network and upgrade. So I've recently, just this year, upgraded now to chartered member, and automatically you'll go to associate member once you've finished your studies. The upgrading process again gets you to reflect on your career. It gets you to think about the value, the impact, the work that you do, and joining all of that together into a coherent story, because once you've done that once, you can tell that story over and over again to recruiters and all that sort of stuff. So that's very valuable. At the end of the day, what you've got to remember is this is your career. The reason that you are here is because this is benefiting your career. So make it your priority. Get out there and get into people's faces. Network. Don't just be a bystander. Don't just be an observer. Get involved. Talk to people. Use the resources that are there to help you. Use the people, like in the branch networks, that are there to help you. And the CIPD and everyone who's involved in it wants you to be successful. So make use of that. So I figured that if anybody had questions, they would either be so specific to your particular course that you're better off asking your tutor, or somebody in the branch network, or just come and ask me directly myself. I'll be around later on today. Also connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter and so on. CPD.works is a website. On that website will be a link to the slides and hopefully the video as well, which you can share with your friends and so on. So that's all from me. Good luck with your studies and with your career. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.